Hi, welcome to episode 230 of the Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy K on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where this episode and every episode show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea, where I sell my handspun yarns, and we have a Ravelry group called The Corner of Knit and Tea. If you haven't come and joined us, please do. Hi, how are you? It is Monday, May 13th, and it is warm today. We are finally getting our first little taste of spring and early summer weather. It is going to be in the high 70s, low 80s for the week, and we could not be more thrilled. I'm enjoying the warmer weather. Actually, this past weekend, I had to do some activities outside in the cool weather, so yes. Let's see. I last talked to you last Tuesday, which was a little bit late for me. I don't have a ton to tell you about life things. I caught up on work last week and posts and all kinds of other things. I made a lot of crafting progress, which I'm excited to show you. On Saturday morning, I went out and did a 5K. It was 48 degrees and rainy, and I did it anyway, and it actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, and it is good prep for the Ireland trip, which is now about 2.5 weeks away. It's crazy. It is coming up so fast, and I will take this opportunity to remind you that between May 31st and June 13th, I will not be in the country. So I am going to close my Etsy shop, and I will not be podcasting during that time. I hope to take a bunch of photos and maybe even some little short videos on the trip, but I have no idea what my internet access will be. We are kind of going all around Ireland and sometimes staying at college campuses and various other places, so I don't know what our access is going to be to amenities. So I will take a couple weeks off, and hopefully I'll come home with lots of crafts. I'll talk to you a little bit today about what I'm planning on taking with me. Anyway, so I did a 5K on Saturday. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, which is good. I think maybe I might not die in Ireland. I was having some second thoughts about signing up for an exercise trip in Ireland. We will be running 6 of the 8 days. And then we are going to take a slight detour to Scotland, just because we've always wanted to go and we're already over there. So it should be a wonderful trip filled with yarn stores and knitting and exercising. Anyway, so Saturday was cold and rainy, and yesterday it was cold and a little bit rainy as well, and we went and saw Avengers Endgame. So that was kind of fun. We are all caught up now. And then today was work, and this week, the International Quilt Market is in town. Their convention is actually here in Kansas City, and so I will actually be attending part of that for work, and I have quite a few appointments this week around that. So it's kind of an exciting week, and I've got lots of crafting to show you, so let's jump in. I decided today to drink some London tea from the Tea House. This I got on my last trip to London in January, and I say my last trip to London like they're frequent. The last time I went to London before that, I was 18, which is mumble years ago. At this point, it is 23 years ago, so I do not go frequently, but I do make the most of it when I do. So this is London tea, and it is in a mug. Oops, I spilled some. It is in a lovely mug from a friend who does not live in London, but lives in the United Kingdom, and I saw her when I was there this year, and I spilled just a little bit of it, but it is a lovely knitting mug, and so I'm drinking my London tea in my mug. And making a mess. Thank goodness it's easily cleanable. Let's start with crafting. I don't remember where I left off with you last week. I will show you my first and only finished object for the week. It is another hat, and this one is called Golden Pear, and I am a bad podcaster because I don't remember who the designer is. It is a free pattern on Ravelry made to use up some scraps of yarn, and that's kind of exactly what I did. The yarn here is Kramer Perfection worsted, and it is an acrylic yarn in a worsted weight. I believe it's a 70-30 wool, acrylic wool, And these are the colors that I used to knit Miles a sweater earlier this year, and so I whipped up a simple hat with some of the leftovers. I still have a little bit more, but probably not enough to do a set of matching mittens, so I suppose this is going to be it. But that makes 2 hats for Miles, so I'm starting to work on the kids' winter gear. Basically, I needed something super simple to knit in the Avengers movie. It needed to be roundy, and I'll show you my other 2 projects and why they're not super simple. So I cast this on and finished it off last night. So it was pretty much about a 1.5 day knit. Of course, I screwed up some of the pattern stitching in the movie, so actually I did most of it at home last night. But that is Golden Pear, and like I said, it's a perfect hat for scraps. You know, cast on as many as you... I think the pattern is only written for infant size, but I have been casting on hats for toddlers for a long time now. My go-to for like a worsted weight cast on is I go check out the barley pattern and see how many stitches are good for various sizes. And I also love the barley pattern, but I've knit a bunch of those. So this year, Golden Pear. So that's my finished. Let's talk about my other 2 projects. The first is a project for the summer garment make-along, which is a joint make-along that I'm hosting along with the girls from the Northern Knits podcast. That's Jocelyn and Diana. The goal is to make a spring garment for yourself. We have ruled adult garments only, but that can be anything from tees and tops to shawls, skirts, dresses, anything you would like. All crafts are welcome, so knit, crochet, weave, spin, and do something with your hand-spun yarn. And like I said, it just needs to be an adult garment. That is going now through June 21st, which is the summer solstice. And this is a knit that I am working on for part of that knit along. It's not a knit along, it's a craft along. I am choosing to knit. The other thing is that Jocelyn loves cotton, and if you are working for spring and summer knits, linen and cotton blends are wonderful. So if you have those, you are more than welcome to use those. Check out the details in either of our groups, and there will be prize draws at the end. So my contribution to this, although I'm not eligible for prizes, so my spring garment is also some review yarn that I am working with for A Good Yarn Sarasota, and I went ahead and brought along the label. This is A Good Yarn's new house yarn. It is called Boca Chica, and it is a fingering weight yarn, 100% superwash merino, approximately 480 yards to 4 ounces, and it is a lovely yarn. I do need to correct something. I originally thought that it was a chainette construction, and it is not. It looks a little bit like it, but it is actually a plied yarn, and I am using the super bright color Duval Street, and this one is called Rainbow Reef. And I'm using this one to tone this one down a little bit. So let's talk about what I'm knitting. I picked the Elfie pattern by Astrid Schramm. It is a free pattern on Ravelry, and it is for a lightweight summer top, knit top down with contiguous sleeve shaping, which is new to me. I have not done that before, and knit in the round. And last week I talked to you about how I was not super keen on knitting stripes in the round, because no matter what I do, I feel like I still get jogs in my stripes, and I wasn't enjoying that. And the way Elfie is constructed, I don't think I brought the pattern with me this time, but it's basically, like I said, a top down with contiguous set-in sleeves, and you start with the dark, at least the way the pattern shows, you start with the dark color at the top, and you are heavy on the dark color, interspersing a few rows of light color, and then as you work down, the light colored stripes get bigger, the dark colored stripes get smaller, and you blend into the light color. Anyway, I decided that I did not want to do that because that was going to be a lot of striping, and I did not enjoy how the back was ending up. So what I did last time, when I should say thank you to those of you who commented and gave me suggestions. One viewer suggested that maybe I work the sweater in 2 pieces and seam it together so that I could seam the striping appropriately. That is a great idea. Unfortunately, in this particular pattern, because it is top down and the contiguous sleeves are part of it, that doesn't really work. Although I suppose I could have knit it from the top down to under the bust and then knit the front and back separately and just seamed those down the sides, but I don't know how I would have seamed the sleeve shaping in there. So I opted not to do that. what I did up to do was look up a technique called helical knitting. And basically what it discusses is, so knitting is not actually, particularly when you knit it in the round, knitting is not actually a full circle, because when we are knitting, we are actually creating like a helix or a coil that stacks on itself. Think of it like a spring in a ballpoint pen or even a slinky. Even though it looks like it is circular, you're not actually completing a perfect circle, because when you get back to the beginning of the circle, you're actually angling upwards over the next set or over the next row. And so that is why we get that distortion when we try and end stripes at the exact same point on every single row. What some people have done, and this takes a little bit of mental effort, and you may want to Google it, I used as a resource an old post from the Grimperina blog, who I absolutely love, where she talks about helical knitting, and she also draws some diagrams, and I will try and link that in the show notes, just because that was a great place to start for me. Basically, she draws what looks like a coil, and she draws the stitches on the coil and where they fall. Helical knitting is a process of knitting stripes by joining colors at different points in the circle. And then basically what you are doing is you are creating a number of coils, and you are like interstacking them or enmeshing them so that your stripes are a little bit more like a barber pole all the way up. So the point at which you join your first yarn, there is a little bit of a blip, but then you start knitting and working rounds on it and picking up the colors as you're working with them. And one of the practical pieces of advice is that they suggest that, like a stitch before you get to the end of the round, you slip that stitch and then start knitting with the next color. Well, as you start doing that, your beginning of round starts to shift ever so slightly. And as your beginning of round starts to shift ever so slightly, you don't notice it as much, and there's not that constant one line seam where your stripes are lining up. So now let me show you what I have done. I have now actually pulled off for the sleeves. I did that late last night, and so I am ready to just start working the body, which pleases me to no end. But here is my version of Elfie. So let's talk about this. I started per the pattern, and then as you can see, there is contiguous sleeve shaping. So if you have not done this before, basically you are just increasing in slightly different places to create a round sleeve cap. It is a free pattern, so you can go check it out if you're interested. I'm not going to get more involved than that, but that is sort of the shaping for the top. Now let's talk about what I have done. Last time I showed you, at the center back, I was really unhappy with the way the stripes were coming together. Now, if you see here, you can see one point at the top of the center back where I started the contrast color stripe, and that area looks a little bit off. However, I bet you can't tell where I switched in subsequent rounds, can you? You see, it just looks like one continuous round of stripes. Doesn't that look great? You don't have any of those jogs. You do have the variegation in the yarn because the yarn has pink in it, so sometimes it blends in versus stands out. But basically what you have, and here it is on the front, just to show you, and it is just a nice stripy top. So my plan is to continue to work this sweater, working my helical stripes in the round all the way to the bottom, or until I run out of the dark pink, in which case I may need to do a small section, like I did the dark pink up here all by itself, and I may need to do a small section at the bottom of just the variegated yarn by itself, but we will cross that bridge when we come to it. I am super thrilled that I made it this far. I have not tried it on yet, although I'm going to knit maybe another inch or so and then try it on just to be sure that it is wide enough for me, but holding it up to me, I think it will be. And my plan is probably going to be to wear some kind of a tank top or a shell underneath this anyway, because the pattern calls for you to knit it on US 5s with fingering weight, and I think that's going to be just a little bit sheer for me, because you can see it's a little bit sheer, which is fine. I could have gone down a needle size, but then I would have had gauge issues, and then I would have had to decide which size to knit, and so I decided to stick to the pattern, and like I said, if I have to, I'll just wear a little shell of a tank top underneath. So this is my Elfie. although it is not exactly elfy because I am doing things differently. So that is my sweater, and I'm really, really thrilled with the way it's coming out, and I will link more resources in the show notes. So that was project 1, and like I said, I couldn't be more pleased with the way it's coming out or the progress that I made this week. Sorry, I just lost one stitch, so I wanted to pick that up. And now the body will just zoom along. There are a few increases, I believe, for, it's kind of an A-line top, so I believe there are a few increases, but in general, I expect it to be kind of smooth sailing all the way to the bottom, and I do actually really like the way the gray and the white break up a little bit of the pink. I think it will be a little bit less jarring as a sweater. It looks like I've got a little pooling in some points, but as I'm changing my stitch count again, hopefully that will fix that a little bit. It looks like I have like a little bit of flashing right here with the pink. But you know, it's fine. It's just going to be a fun, lightweight summer top. And I'm enjoying it. So that is that one. And again, if you're interested in the yarn, it's from a good yarn, Sarasota, and it is their Boca Chica base. And they have tons of other colors. It's very funny because as reviewers, we are often given our choice of colors, and they send us the options and we pick them. And I have seen a bunch of people pick this pink and gray and pink combination. And now I'm a little sorry that I didn't pick something different, just because they have a ton of great colors and I think it would be nice to showcase them all. But you're just going to get a neon bright top from me. So the second project that I talked about casting on, and I can't remember if I had cast it on, I don't think I had even no, I didn't. I hadn't cast it on when I talked to you last week. I cast it on last Wednesday, this Wednesday, right after I talked to you. This is my Night Shift shawl, which is by Drea Renee Knits, and I don't have a great picture of it. The color on my printer is going, and I didn't print out the big picture because I didn't want to waste ink. But this is a beautiful slip stitch shawl pattern by Andrea Mowry, who is Drea Renee Knits. I have showed you this pattern multiple times. I picked out my yarns last year, and I was super excited to get started. So I did start this week, and I will discuss one color that I swapped out with you. But I want to show you, this is my Night Shift shawl so far. The Night Shift shawl calls for 900 yards of, I don't even remember what weight yarn. Mine, because it is my hand spun, probably ranges between a DK and a sport and a worsted, depending on which ones I'm using. I spun these at different points during my career. The pattern, during my spinning career, the pattern calls for spin cycle yarns, which are not hand spun yarns, but are spun from different lengths of different colors so that they mimic hand spun yarn in the fact that they are barber pulled. And so I pulled 6 skeins from my stash, and this shawl is actually a pretty simple slip stitch pattern with some increases thrown in, and I'm not going to tell you any more than that because it is a paid pattern, but it is really fun to see how the colors interplay because my hand spun yarns are from fairly variegated braids of fiber, and I have spun them in various ways. A lot of times I spin to maximize barber pulling, so I spin in short color runs, but a couple of these I actually spun in longer color runs, so it's been fun to see how they play together. So I started up at the top with a little bit of yellow as my background color and some bright teal as my contrast color, and then my background color moved into purple, and I brought in some kind of fall yellows and ochre. There are reds and oranges in that braid, but I didn't get to them there. Then I moved down into a kind of pinky, purpley, yellowy mix and some dark blue for a contrast. The dark blue then went into kind of greens as I moved into greens and peaches. And then the color that I swapped out I had a colorway called Urchin. And it looked, so this is, I'm trying to remember, this is Widdershins, and this is kind of my fall colored. It is oranges and yellows, and it's a little hard to see, but there's like a really nice pink in there. And I had another braid that was kind of peachy beigey tones with some blues in there. It was called Urchin, and if you look at some of my previous photos, it was a very pale color, and my concern was that it would look either too close to this or it would match too closely with my first color, which is like pale yellows and greens and blues in certain parts in addition to magenta. So I had some thinking to do, and I decided to go back and toss the stash and see what I had. And interestingly enough, I had this bump that I had spun up. This, I believe, is Spunky Eclectic in her Glacier colorway, and so it is greens and yellows and blues and the faintest lavender, and I decided that it would make a nice contrast to these other ones, and I was right. So after that, I went into a pinky and purple section, and also that kind of aquamarine or like turquoise section, and so that is where I stopped the other night. I am through section, let me think about this, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm through section 4 of the pattern. I believe there are 10 sections in total. The next color that I need to wind up and work in is the only one that is unwound now, and this is, I think this is called Block Party, and it is this colorway. So that is what's going to start next here. Like I said, I could not have imagined that the colors would play together like this. This kind of reminds me of, if you are into musicals, you will know about Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. It is based off a biblical story of Joseph, Jacob's youngest son, and how he, in helping the Pharaoh in Egypt, these are all biblical stories, don't ask me why I'm telling this, because I am actually not religious, but I'm referring to the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, which I have been in before and sung the songs, and the Pharaoh is so grateful to Joseph for helping him through Egypt's famine that he gives him a coat of many colors. And in the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, there is a song about all the colors in the coat, and it's a ton of different colors, and that's exactly what this reminds me of, because it is all these variegated braids that come together in unexpected ways with unexpected bits and pieces. And I am absolutely in love with this. It is not at all what I necessarily expected it would be. I keep getting surprised by little bits and pieces and going, oh, do I like that section? But so far I have decided to just keep going, and there is nothing in this shawl that I do not enjoy. I will say that I remembered last week when I was starting to think about color placement and which colors to put where, I did watch an episode of The Yarn Hoarder, that's Amber, and she has a lovely podcast on YouTube, and in one of her episodes she discusses her experience with the shawl and discusses how best to choose colors for certain sections of the shawl based on which sections will be worked together. So if you are thinking about making this, I recommend you listen to her video. It just gives you an interesting perspective on how to select colors. I don't want to give too much away from the pattern, but she does talk about basically the whole shawl is at any given time you are knitting with 2 separate colors of yarn, and you are using slip stitches to create all of these color changes, and it discusses how you should choose certain colors. For instance, your A color is going to be the whole first chunk of your shawl, so you want to choose the color that you really like and one that goes well with all the other colors, because it's going to be the background color for all of that. So I can recommend that episode of Yarn Hoarder podcast. I think it was episode 26. I could be wrong, but I do know that in the cover shot it shows the shawl, so that was how I figured it out. I just went back and looked at all the cover shots for her episodes, and it was an episode from earlier this year, and I bookmarked it sort of so that I could, well, maybe not earlier this year, maybe late last year, but I bookmarked it so that I could go back and look. So, and all those notes are on my project page. So that is my night shift shawl. So I am super pleased with both these projects. I am going to be working on these this week. And the only other thing that I share, in part for amusement and in part because I'm sure I'll cast something on with it, is Briggs and Little, who I have worked with their yarns before. They are holding a spring make-along, and I believe for them it's knit, crochet, maybe I think just weaving, knit, crochet, and weaving, because it is using some of their lighter weight yarns. And Briggs & Little has some sport weight yarns, and so the prompt is to create something for spring using one of the lighter weight yarns. And I decided that I wanted to participate, because who doesn't need a knit along? And one of the bases that they selected as one of their lighter weight yarns I've never worked with before. So I thought, hey, I'll kill two birds with one stone. I'll order a skein of yarn and I'll work with it. And I found a shop in Canada that did free shipping, which was amazing. That always really surprises me in today's day and age, particularly because you would think that Canada and the US, because they're close, would have reduced shipping, but they do not. It is expensive to ship, and so I do not know how they actually provide free shipping, particularly because Briggs & Little yarns are super, super reasonable. They are workhorse yarns, and they are priced accordingly so. So I decided to order one skein of Light and Fancy soft spun, which is their sport weight yarn, to create something. It is approximately 245 yards of a sport weight yarn, and I chose the colorway Bright Red, and my thought is that I would create either a hat or a cowl. And I waited and waited for it to come and wondered why it was taking so long, and then it finally got here, and I realized they sent it like slow parcel post. And I was away from my mailbox for a while. But when it arrived, it came in a somewhat flat envelope, and I was highly confused until I opened it and saw this. Now, I can totally understand why you would want to vacuum pack yarn and send it, but I've never actually seen anyone do it. And it kind of makes me laugh. So the day I got this, I was very amused. So I did a little live Instagram video, and I've been asked by a few people to show opening it up and watching it fluff up on Instagram. So as soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to record that short video segment, and that will be uploaded to my Instagram live. So if you are interested, check that out, because this just makes me laugh. So that's probably next on my needles. My plan is to just do a simple cowl. I found one that had a few leaves in it, so I thought it would be a nice kind of springy. I realize that it's red, and so it's not quite springy, but I just wanted to try something new. So this is Briggs & Little Light and Fancy Soft Spun. It is a sport weight yarn. It is in the colorway, looks like cranberry, and it is 100% pure wool. That's about it. It's a single ply yarn. So that is my Briggs & Little. You might see that next week in a project. So let's go to spinning really quickly. I do not have much to tell you. I am almost done spinning the singles of that red Boga fiber. I expect maybe I'll finish those this evening, because that might be what I do while I wait for the video to render. So that is the plan for this evening, and then maybe I will ply it up this week. My week plans are a little crazy because I have some meetings and such. I did, however, select my next fiber to spin. This is a Hello Yarn Club fiber from earlier this year. It is called Fluttering of Ravens, and actually, I take it back. It is December 2018, so it is the end of last year. It is called Fluttering of Ravens, and it is a Charolais, Charolais wool top. And that is the label. And it is inspired by birds, obviously. This year, Adrienne of Hello Yarn is doing a series of bird-inspired colorways, as inspired by photographs and paintings from one of the members of the group. So this is Fluttering of Ravens. It is dark blues with a little bit of purple and some teal tones, and it is really hard to capture on this camera, but it is beautiful. Charolais seems like a slightly crisper wool. It reminds me a little bit, just feeling it, of maybe Shetland, although it might have a little bit more crimp than Shetland. It's a little springy, but it's not super soft. My guess is these would make great boot socks. I will have to be careful not to over twist, but my plan is to spin this up for yarn for the shop. So if you are into moody raven-like colorways, this will go up in a few weeks. So that is all the news that's fit to print for today. I hope that you have a lovely week and that you are enjoying working on some summery projects. It is not too late to join the Spring Garment Make-Along if you are working on things, so come and join us. I haven't exactly decided what the summer craft-alongs are going to be, although I think I'm going to do Christmas in July again. So that can be knitting your Christmas socks or getting a head start on your Christmas gifts in July. That will run for the month of July, and then I haven't decided after that. So, be thinking about those, and I will be talking to you again soon. Before you know it, I will say until next week, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye!